It's been 12 years since I became a digital nomad, and over 125 countries later, people always ask me what my secret is. And here's the truth. There really isn't one, but there are lessons. Some I learned quickly, some took years, and some I'm still struggling with more than a decade in. I've learned 12 of these lessons the hard way, not from books or advice threads, but from things I messed up, fixed, and in some cases, am still working through. They're organized by theme, not timeline, because some lessons keep coming back around. And the one I still struggle with the most after all this time is where we're starting. The world is big, and there are so many places to see. It's incredibly easy to set a pace that's just not sustainable. And I still do this sometimes, even after 12 years. Let me give you a recent example. In September 2025, I spent 1 month in Italy bouncing around to different destinations. Some places I stayed only 1 night, and the longest stay was a week, which wasn't really even relaxing. I was also traveling with other people besides Kevin for almost the entire month, which meant extra social commitment on top of my full-time work and the pace we were traveling. By the end of that month, I was exhausted. I still want to see every country, explore new places, create travel content, try new food, and I don't think that urge is going away anytime soon. The fear of missing out is very real, but what I've learned is rest is really important too. Building in time to recuperate makes the rest of your travels better. When I first started traveling, I was moving every 2 to 4 nights. That was way too fast. Now I try to stay in places for 2 to 4 weeks, but even now, I have to actively prevent myself from slipping into that faster pace too often. At the beginning, I didn't think I'd be a digital nomad forever. I treated it a bit like vacation. I was packing too much into every day, and I was tempted to spend money like I was on vacation too. The problem is that long-term vacation pace leads to burnout, and vacation spending isn't sustainable long-term either. When you have a vacation mindset, you're not building the system you need to make this lifestyle sustainable for years. Things first started to change for me around the 2-year mark, when my monthly freelancing income first matched my engineering income. Then in 2018, about 4 years in, I had this moment where I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing now. And that meant I had to shift my approach even more. What sustainable living as a digital nomad actually looks like is having flexible, realistic monthly budgets. For me, that's typically between $2,000 and $4,000. It also means work is a central part of my day, not something I squeeze in between activities. It means building systems and adapting on the fly, and accepting that I can't do everything. If I could tell my past self anything, it would be to slow down. This can be sustainable if you make it sustainable. The rhythm looks different for everybody, but treating it like vacation will burn you out. As my work got more demanding, I had to create better separation between work and life. What works for me now is having separate devices. I have a work laptop and a personal laptop. No work apps are on my personal devices. No work email is on my phone. This means I can actually disconnect when I'm not working. I also block off hours on my work calendar. I'm only available for 8 hours per day on average, but those 8 hours might vary depending on where I am and what's going on at work. The tool doesn't really matter. The boundary does. When your office changes every 2 to 4 weeks and you work from where you sleep, boundaries are what keep you sane and help prevent burnout. Early on, I tried to maintain certain routines everywhere I went. I would always work from cafes, and I would try to get a normal amount of work done on travel days. But what I learned over time is you shouldn't try to make it the same everywhere. Adapt to the environment instead of fighting it. So now, if I'm in a hot climate, I'll explore in the mornings when it's cooler outside. If I'm in Europe, I'll work in the evenings to overlap with my US team. Sometimes I'll work from cafes, sometimes from my accommodation, and occasionally I'll join a co-working. For fitness, sometimes I go to the gym regularly, sometimes I do home workouts, and sometimes I'll go out on a hike. Some places don't have a great fitness option available. The key insight for me is that's okay, because everything is temporary, It's the averages that matter. On travel days, I used to try to get a normal amount of work done, and that didn't always go so well. Now, I account for travel as one of the big things that happens that day. I'll have a shorter to-do list and flex my hours. The core principle is that I aim for around 40 hours of work per week, but my daily hours are flexible. I protect the outcome, but not the specific method of how I achieve it. The next lesson is one I'm still learning, and honestly, I might always be learning it. I have an engineering background, and I love travel hacking, which means I love optimizing. The problem is, this can lead to spending a lot of time for relatively small gains. Let me give you a specific example. I had a Hyatt free night certificate that used to be tradable for 10,000 points after it expired. Kevin and I had a hotel stay coming up that cost 9,500 points. I didn't want to redeem the certificate because I wanted to let it expire and exchange it for 10,000 points. But after the certificate expired, I learned that this specific certificate wasn't eligible for trade-in anyway. I lost 9,500 points trying to come out ahead by 500 points, which is worth $5 to $10. That was the moment I realized that optimization can be its own form of waste. Don't get me wrong, some optimization is valuable. Credit cards, accommodation and flight booking, financial tracking, those things can save you a lot of money, but you can optimize yourself into wasting more time than you're saving. I'm still learning where that line is, and weirdly, letting go of perfect optimization actually made travel less stressful. You do not need to do this next lesson at my level. I'm just telling you what's possible. I'm going to be honest, I take this pretty far. I have over 50 credit cards, and the results are real. I save over $10,000 every year on flights and hotels. I went from sleeping in $5 a night hostel dorms to staying in luxury properties on points. And I've flown business and first class more times than I can count. But here's the thing. Even if you don't go as deep as I have, earning 2 points per dollar or 2% back on all of your purchases compounds significantly over time. The most important thing is to choose a credit card without foreign transaction fees. That's non-negotiable if you're traveling internationally. My advice is not to sleep on this, even if you don't want to jump into the deep end like I have. Start with the basics. This compounds over years. I've been doing this since 2011, and it's made a massive difference in how I travel and how much it costs. If you're noticing a pattern here, it's this. The digital nomad lifestyle only works if you design it for sustainability, not excitement. Tracking my finances is the foundation that enabled everything else. I went from having no savings when I started to being in a strong financial situation 12 years later. How did I do that? By tracking every single dollar consistently for 12 years. I used travel spend to track my personal expenses, Splitwise to track shared expenses with Kevin and others, and YNAB for overall budgeting. Every expense gets logged, every single one. It sounds tedious, but it's the foundation that enabled everything else. This tracking enabled me to develop financial frameworks. I can accurately budget between $2,000 and $4,000 per month for sustainable spending. I know how to balance more expensive destinations with less expensive ones. And it built my confidence that this lifestyle is financially viable long-term. You cannot sustain nomadic life without understanding your costs. It's boring, but it's essential. Travel was sometimes lonely earlier on before I realized how important building community is. One of the big turning points was joining Wi-Fi Tribe in 2018. And the trip I took with them to Bolivia in 2019 was pivotal. It was the first time I spent significant time with other digital nomads versus travelers. That experience really solidified that this was a real lifestyle choice versus something temporary. But even after learning that lesson, the loneliest period for me was Christmas and New Year's 2020 in Playa del Carmen, Mexico during the pandemic. I spent it by myself. My friends had left, but I felt like I couldn't go home because of quarantines and the foreign earned income exclusion. conclusion. To exclude some of my income from US taxes, I have to spend at least 330 days abroad each year. I was already committed to that number for 2020, and breaking it would have cost me thousands of dollars. It was extremely lonely. My mom wrote me an email that said she hadn't heard me that sad in a long time. I still have that email saved as a reminder of how important community is. For people just starting out, go somewhere with other nomads. In digital nomad hotspot cities, there are regular meetups, WhatsApp groups, conferences, co-working and co-living spaces. Go where they are to start building your community. One lesson that completely changed my experience: finding a partner who wants the same lifestyle long-term. Before I met Kevin, dating was mostly not very successful. The pattern I kept seeing was that I would meet other nomads, but many of them were just doing this for now with plans to move back home and settle down at some point. I met Kevin at Bansko Nomad Fest in Bulgaria in 2022. We didn't start dating right away. We met again at another conference later that year. After that, we planned some travels together, and it just kind of never stopped. What makes it work is we were both already nomads when we met. We both knew this is what we wanted to do long term. This was very important to me. I didn't want to date somebody who thought they were going to want to move home in 1 or 2 or 5 years. This isn't a rule, it's just what made dating as a nomad work for me. If you want to keep being a nomad, it works better to date other nomads who want to keep being nomads. Having a partner who's a committed, long-term nomad has been a huge gain for me. Another mental shift I had to make: trusting healthcare systems outside of the US. Medical care is one of those things where people want comfort, but the reality is that medical care abroad is often less expensive and better quality than in the US. I have comprehensive global health coverage through Genki, and I can strategically take care of my health in affordable countries. In 2025, I got a comprehensive checkup in Bangkok for $785, and insurance covered most of it. In the US, the same level of checkup would have cost thousands of dollars, even after insurance in many cases. I also go to the same dentist in Bulgaria every year. I used to rush all of my appointments during my short visits back to the US each year. Now I spread them throughout the year wherever I am. Overcoming that mental barrier was the hardest part. Once I did, I realized that healthcare abroad actually allows me to take care of my health sustainably long term. Another thing that's evolved over time is how I think about new versus familiar places. Early on, I was trying to maximize novelty all the time. I felt pressure to constantly see new places, but around year 8 or 9, I started returning to places and realized I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I still want to visit every country, but now it's about exploring deeply. I'm no longer attached to speed at all. Now I have around a 50-50 balance of new places and familiar places each year. I've been to Bulgaria for 4 consecutive summers, and I'm going back in 2026 for summer number 5. I return to Bangkok regularly too. Returning to places works for a lot of reasons. It relieves decision fatigue because I already know how things work. Work is easier because I've already tested the internet. And it feels a bit like coming home. You don't have to choose between new and familiar. You can balance both. After 12 years, I value depth as much as I value breadth. After 12 years and over 125 countries, I haven't figured it all out. Some things are still hard. Pacing is the big one. I still have to actively combat unsustainable pace because there are so many places I want to see. My engineering mindset that leads me to want to over-optimize everything never fully goes away. Work-life balance means constant juggling. Let me give you a recent example. In 2024, I spent 6 months in West Africa. There were power outages constantly in Nigeria. In Ghana, we went 3 days without power or water. These were mostly new destinations, so the decision fatigue was extreme. The cracks really started showing from poor sleep and low productivity. At one point, I had this feeling of I want to go home, even though I don't have a home to go home to. Things have gotten better since then, and worse again since then, and better and worse and better. That's just how it goes. If you're waiting to figure it all out before starting, you'll never start. The point isn't perfection, it's sustainable imperfection. This lifestyle requires active management, constant adjustment, and honest acknowledgement of trade-offs. And after 12 years, I'm still learning. That's okay. that's part of it. Do I ever question if it's worth it? No, not really. I do get tired sometimes though, but I've never questioned if the lifestyle itself is worth it. The positives always outweigh the negatives. Nothing would make me stop. I'm in this for life. If you've been nomadic for a while, what lesson would you add to this list? And if you are thinking about starting, what's the part that feels the hardest right now? If you want honest, sustainable takes on nomad life, not just the highlight reel, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.